Last time on Let's Play Trauma Team, we had made some very interesting discoveries about the disease that has been spreading throughout Portland. Apparently, it is a virus that can transcend its host's death, which is really scary. But where do we go from here?
Hey, little guy. Could you analyze something for me?
Sure. Huh? Haven't I already analyzed this for you, Dr. Kimishima?
That's a mean trick, Atlus.
Yes, but I want to know more details.
Like what?
We know now that the bloodstain comes from the same person as these bones, but there was no obvious damage to the deceased's clothing. Can you investigate in detail into what kind of hemorrhaging would have caused that bloodstain?
I see. All right. Can you give me some time for that, please?
Of course. I'll be counting.
Dr. Kimishima, the analysis of the syringe is complete.
The syringe. The one that was in the case?
Oh, yes. It's about that. Interferon, acyclovir, ribavirin, lamivudine.
Slow down a second. What are you talking about?
It's the medicines that were confirmed to be in the syringe and the ampules.
All that was in there?
Seriously, I don't understand. Every antiviral drug on record is in this list.
Antiviral drugs?
There was even an ampule of Ashvin's in there, too.
Ashvin's?
It's a medicine that hasn't been fully authorized by the FDA.
Well...
It's an excellent antiviral drug, but there were some problems with side effects.
Huh. Just what were these reported side effects?
Okay, let's see. Ashvin's is an antiviral drug. It draws on the patient's calcium to suppress viral activities. If used in excess, the subject will become calcium deficient. The body then draws calcium from the bones and it leads to all sorts of complications.
A drug that robs calcium from the bones.
Well, that isn't its purpose, of course, but that is what happens.
I see. Something bothers me about this, though.
Isn't it that
The
fractured
deceased
femur?
had a large amount of antiviral drugs in his possession, along with a dangerous, unapproved drug that caused calcium deficiency in the human body.
What? Oh, there's the new card.
Yes, it seems that these can be used together. The large amounts of antiviral drugs found in the corpse's personal effects, and an ampule of Ashvin's, a dangerous antiviral reagent. The reason that Ashvin's was never approved was because...
Osteoporosis.
Indeed, Ashvin's consumes large amounts of calcium from the human body. A 50-kilogram person's body contains roughly 1 kilogram of calcium. 99% of that is in the bones and teeth. In other words, the side effect of the Ashvin's drugs is...
Decreased bone density, osteoporosis.
Yes. What first comes to mind would be an abnormal decrease in bone density. Considering the information that's been gathered so far, this person likely administered the Ashvin's drug to...
Himself, right?
Yes, themselves. The first piece of evidence supporting that is...
The femur.
the complete fracturing of the femur, the strongest bone in the human body. Continuing on, the second point would be... Yes, the loss of the meniscus in the left knee. Thus, we can deduce that the person's weakened skeletal system was due to the side effects of the Ashvin's drug. I have a bad feeling about this.
Okay, so I guess it's just putting information together. Yeah, I know, I'm kind of resorting to the adventure game try everything, because try everything will work.
Now we're starting to see how the serviceman at USAMRIID was infected as well. The virus rests within that skeleton. The root of infection is... Yes, it's when it comes in contact with a mucous membrane. Reaching a mucous membrane within the mouth or body causes the virus to infect that person. But there's no way that a researcher would lick or swallow a bone. However, the USAMRIID staff did collect a bone sample for their research. In order to obtain that sample, the researcher...
Which would cause a whole bunch of particles to go into the air.
He used a router to shave away a portion of the bone.
Like microscopic
this
particles.
This is likely what caused the researcher to be infected. The reason for this is... Yes, shaving bone with a router causes particles of bone dust to fly out into the air. It's likely that the researcher inhaled some of that powder while he was working. The powder then carried the infection and made contact with the mucous membranes. That is my hypothesis to explain the infection of the USAMRIID researcher.
Wow, this is looking like a really short case.
Yes, it seems that these can be combined. These bones passed on the viral hemorrhagic fever via contact with mucous membranes. And whoever this was, they had been taking large doses of antiviral drugs along with a dangerous unapproved one. It's likely that this person was... Yes, this individual had been infected with some kind of virus.
Wasn't sure there.
That virus itself was...
If that's the case, then the cause of death was...
I should stop making conjectures. I need some hard evidence to back these theories up. Hemorrhagic fever causes hemorrhaging from all over the body, along with other various conditions. If we could find traces of that disease...
We're getting there now.
Hemorrhaging from all over.
Is something wrong?
Oh, well, we just received the results from the analysis. It says that the blood stain on the person's clothing contained traces of saliva.
So he was vomiting
Saliva.
blood?
If that's the case, then that blood stain was... Yes, it came through the mouth, likely by being vomited. That would explain why there were no signs of damage to the person's clothing. The blood stain on the clothing was due to the person vomiting blood. The viral hemorrhagic fever causes bleeding from all over, both internally and externally. Vomiting blood is one of the signs of this disease as well. This person died of viral hemorrhagic fever. The evidence that I'm drawing that conclusion from is... That's right. If this person was still alive after having had an attack of vomiting blood, I highly doubt that they'd go on without doing something about the bloody clothes. Thus, the traces of vomited blood on the clothing indicates that this person died soon after this attack.
That's so much like that other thing that happened. You know, with the girl in the station and so many people that... Just so many people in
We
Portland.
finally figured out the cause of death.
Yes. Long before the pandemic that is currently raging broke out, this person caught and died of the viral hemorrhagic fever that caused this quarantine. Who in the world are you?
Dr. Kimishima, if I may,
Go on.
I've noticed something.
I'm all ears.
Well, this antiviral reagent, Ashvin's, it was rejected by the FDA for its dangerous side effects. That, along with the large amount of antiviral drugs, these things aren't available to the general public.
You have a point. Someone who would have access to these things would be... Indeed. It would be someone who has the knowledge of these new drugs and their effects on viruses. It would also be someone who has the authority to obtain such information from the medical community.
That's what I think. Does that help a little?
It's fantastic. Let's move on to the next step. How can we identify this individual, little guy?
But all we have is the skeleton and personal effects.
That shouldn't be a problem. Or is my opinion of you overrated?
Can't he just run it through a database?
If this person is in the health profession, then the FBI database should have an entry. By studying the bones, we can narrow down just who this person was.
Why'd you ask me if you already knew the answer to your own question?
We don't have time for complaining. Look up details about skeletons in our forensics database. Send what you find over to my computer immediately.
Yikes. Give me a moment. There, I found them. You want me to send them over to you, right?
Now it's time for the grand reveal. Let's compare the skeleton's characteristics with our information. Then we can confirm just who this person is.
That's a lot of cards.
Fifteen types of amino acids were detected in the skeleton. There was a very high concentration of nitrogen as well. If I compare this information with the materials available...
Alright.
That's right. We can assume that this person died somewhere around 2 years ago.
2 years ago? Wow.
Someone had this disease 2 years ago? Long before this pandemic began? This fact alone won't get us anywhere. But if I consider it in light of other information...
That scares me.
There's no damage to the pelvis. I should look at its shape, just in case. We can determine something from the shape of the pelvis. The cranial sutures have begun to fuse, but they aren't completely fused yet. This is what's causing the cranial sutures to resemble broken lines instead of solid ones. I recall that the cranial sutures can tell something about a body. The skull has triangular orbital bones. Is there any information that can be deduced by the shape of the orbital bones?
Alright, I think that's all the information we need to determine age, race, and gender. Okay, so he was
The
Caucasian.
German physician Blumenbach established a distinction of 5 major branches of human anatomy. One point mentioned in determining a person's race by skeletal features is the shape of the orbital bones. Comparing this with the materials at hand, this skeleton's race is...
American. That's not a race.
Indeed. This skull has the characteristics of a Caucasian. That's right. A person's age at death can be determined from the state of the cranial sutures. The cranial sutures here have partially fused, indicating that this person's age was...
in their 50s.
Yes, the fusing is consistent with that of a person in their 50s. In other words, it means that this person was around 50 years old at the time of death. An individual's gender can be determined by the shape of the pelvis. According to the materials at hand, this skeleton's gender is...
And that appears to be everything. Wow, this was really short.
Yes. The pelvis is heart-shaped. Thus, we can deduce that this skeleton is male. A Caucasian male in his 50s who died 2 years ago and was familiar with viruses. All the information we need has been gathered. Now we'll be able to figure out whose remains these truly are. We couldn't identify this body after all. But there is an important fact that I understand now. First, let's sort out what we do know. We'll talk later. First is the time since death. The card with that is... Yes. The nitrogen and amino acids in the bones prove that. Remember, the body's soft tissue was gone before it was
I
found.
need to find a download for this
This
soundtrack.
suggests that the body wasn't underwater or buried. Next, I have the card stating the gender of the
I'll
body.
probably do that after I finish. The skeleton was male.
Correct. The shape of the pelvis, the face, and bones prove that. However, he had a thin build. He could hardly be muscular. Next, the age. This card tells our findings.
About 50, right?
Yes, the cranial sutures have fused with age. This proves that this person was at least in his 50s. It's possible to determine his race as well. This card shows my conclusion based on the evidence. Racial differences are mainly exhibited in skull shape. The eye sockets, cheekbones, nose ridge, it's clear. Our next clue is his occupation. Now, this is only speculation. But I believe this card shows what he did for a living. Yes, if the items belong to him, he was in medicine. In addition, it's likely that he worked in pathology.
I would not want to work in that
Now
subfield.
then, what was the cause of his untimely demise? This card shows that reason.
That would be terrible working with viruses.
A virus living within a corpse long after the host dies. I don't want to believe it, but bones don't lie.
Ha!
The virus passes into the mucous membranes on contact.
At least we know how the virus works now.
He died like the man Gabe diagnosed. Hemorrhagic fever. He understood what was happening. He knew why he died. He knew, and it shows, in the last words he had to say.
My son, forgive me. I was enticed by the devil.
That is the truth, illuminated by the light of this life.
Well, maybe knowledge of how the virus works would help in
With this in mind, I can use the data to find an individual...
in how to treat the virus, at least.
He's...
Who is he?
Hey! Hey, you listening? Where are you going?
Just be quiet and follow me. We need to talk to the chief. Chief, I'd like to speak with you.
What did you say?
It may be hard to believe, but listen to me, please. The bones Gabe came here with contained the infectious virus. But since the infection is not carried by air, the chances of these bones being a source of pandemic is low. However, they may still be a clue to finding a solution.
I can't believe the two of you could find out so much.
No, this is just a coincidence. Still, Dr. Tachibana should be done with a biopsy on the same virus.
Vector of infection's unknown, but we've ID'd it. You think we'll make it in time?
It's near hopeless. The disease advances too rapidly. The infected will all die before we finish the DNA analysis.
Damn it. Isn't there any other lead we can follow?
This isn't a clue, but I have one more thing I must report.
You must report?
I compared the reconstructed bones to our database. Only one person was a match for the data we had.
Who?
Who is it?
Him?
Yes, Albert Sart, a professor of virology, who vanished after the Cumberland College incident.
So the guy behind the virus is already dead. Huh, that is a very interesting... Wow, that's really interesting. But what does that do for getting us closer to finding a cure for this virus? I don't know if it does a lot for us, but I'm guessing we'll find out at some point in the endgame. Anyway, it looks like we have another rescue operation with Maria. Wonder how stressful this is going to be. Well, you guys will find out next time on Let's Play Trauma Team.